Testing, testing. Okay, looks like it's live. I'm going to wait another 2 minutes to allow everyone to get on board, and we'll get started. All right, we'll wait a few more minutes and then get started. Looks like 11 people are now connected to this, so that's awesome. Really excited to get started. I'll be watching the chat on the YouTube channel, and also be watching Facebook comments on the Facebook event. So if anyone needs anything or wants to ask a question, just go into the Facebook chat, or the Facebook event page, and just comment, write like a main post on it, or just go and sign into YouTube, and then you can comment here. There's a lovely discussion. Doesn't look as toxic as the Twitch discussions that I've seen before. I think someone suggested that we stream on Twitch earlier. So it's 7:00 p.m. Pacific time though, and so I'll just wait for like a few more people to get started. I mean, you know how you click on the link late, but we'll get started in a few minutes. Really excited. And at the same time, if we have some more time at the end of this discussion, then I think what we'll do is I'll invite you guys to the Google Hangout so you guys can come and ask specific questions and we can discuss them. I guess I can get started with some of the disclaimers that I wanted to talk about. So I think, as with all advice that I give in different talks, I'm always going to give this disclaimer, which is feel free to disregard the advice, because you are yourself. You have, I'm sure everyone in here is really, really smart, and you know, not everything that I'm going to say could be correct. You know, like there are so many different things that people thought for many, many years that turned out to be incorrect. Like, for instance, the Earth was flat. That turned out not to be correct. So feel free to don't take my word as verbatim. Take it as, you know, hey, this is what I wish I knew about money when I was a HS hacker, and you know, do take that, apply your own thoughts to it as well. The second thing that I want to say as a disclaimer is that I'm not like a certified financial accountant or financial planner or anything. So please don't take my advice as like, please make sure that you do your own research as well when you're going to take this advice. I want to give you a good place to get started, but at the same time, you know, it's good to make sure that you understand that do your own research, as with any advice that people are going to give you. Okay, Tyler was just asking me, can I see the YouTube chat? Yes, I can see the YouTube chat. Someone just asked me, what's the deal with the hammer? I don't see a hammer there's no hammer in this room. You might be looking at some of the things I have on the bookshelf. It's kind of random stuff that was kind of in this room when I rented it out. So there's, I think, a little stage light. There's another light, and then there's like just some random stuff. So, okay, and Derek is asking, is this structured or more of a talk or discussion? So I do have some talks, discussion topics in mind. I have probably about like half an hour to an hour worth of stuff to cover, and I can give you a specific overview right now. You know, first I wanted to go and you know, discuss what is money, what goals you might have or might want to create, you know, to create. What to do, what's going to happen when you earn your first paycheck, taxes, and then investing. So those are the general topics, but as you come up with questions, we'll have some more time for in-depth discussion on things that you want to specifically talk about, but it's not just a short Q&A. So keep the more specific, I guess more like longer questions that you might have towards the end. All right, so let's get started. Again, I think I posted this in the Facebook chat, in the Facebook event, but money is a tool. You can use it for good, you can use it for evil, you can waste it, just like a hammer. Oh, okay, that's what you're asking with the hammer. It is a tool. Money is a tool, and you can do whatever you want with it. And I'm not really going to tell you what you should be doing or should not be doing with money, just like I would. You know, I'm going to teach you how to use this tool to accomplish your goals. So just like a hammer, you know, if you don't know how to use a hammer, you can whack random things, and you might like hammer the nails that you want to hammer, but you might accidentally like hit your finger and like destroy it and hurt yourself. Now that might have been your goal. That might be okay with you, and you might be like, you know, what if I wanted to hit myself with a hammer and like hurt myself? Well, that's completely fine. But I'm going to say, hey, like if you want to do that, I'm going to you should at least make that your intention. All right. So it looks like I answered most of the questions on the YouTube channel. Let me just double check the Facebook, make sure everyone's getting on properly. Looks like that's good. So let's get started. So first thing I really wanted to cover is, you know, what is money? And I think even though I'm sure every single person in this chat knows what money is, I mean, I can open up my wallet here and physically take out, here's a $5 bill, this is money. I don't think everyone really takes the time to think about, you know, what exactly is money in a more long-term or, you know, more abstract concept. I mean, I'm sure many of you have heard of this phrase called "time is money," and I think that's a decent way to represent what money is. I mean, if you think about it, if someone has, let's say, $1,000 in the bank, that's worth, and their time is worth like $10 an hour, you know, you could reasonably say, well, a thing that I might buy for $100 is worth 10 hours of my time. And actually, it's worth more because of taxes and all sorts of things that make it so that you have to work longer than 10 hours to earn that thing that you might buy. But yeah, that is one way to think of it. And let's see. Let me read my notes here. Yeah, so it represents time. So if you ever hear of people talking about budgeting their money or thinking about how to spend it, that's really thinking about, like, what do I want to do with my time? Do I want to spend all of my time making sure that I have an awesome house that I live in, or do I want to spend all of my time on, you know, a fancy car, or do I want to spend my time on other things? So budgeting your money really represents how you want to spend it. And with that, you really have to think about what your goals are with your money, or, you know, with your time. And I don't think everyone's really thought, you know, that's the hardest thing to think about when you're a HS hacker, or when you're, you know, when you're young. You really don't know what you want to be doing. So I think in general, the advice that I'm going to give here today is to remain flexible with what you're doing. So I'm going to, but some goals that you might have, and you can come up with some of your own, and feel free to like write them in the chat as well. You know, what your goals are with your money. But one goal some people might have is making sure that you're never in trouble or in your pinch. That if, let's say, you own a car and your car breaks down, then you never have to worry about how much is it going to cost to fix it, because you have the money to make sure that you can solve the problems that you'll deal with. Or for instance, let's say if you need to move to another city, you never have to think about, like, is this something that I can afford? Money is a tool that can help make sure that you're not in trouble in those ways, or or in a pinch. Another common goal that people will have is making sure that you can retire comfortably. That some people are not sure if Social Security will last until the time that we're all 65. While I'm not going to really go into politics here, people who have looked at the numbers, or people who look at, hey, this is what I would get as a Social Security paycheck. That's not really the amount of money that I want to be spending as I live from 65 to maybe even over 100, with kind of how current lifespans are going. That's one of the goals that people will have with money. Some people even, especially I've noticed them on the technology sector, some people will have the goal of early retirement, of making sure that, hey, if I have enough money by the time I'm 40 years old, I can retire. Like, I don't have to wait until I'm 65 and older, where my health might not be as good to retire. I can retire when I'm 40. Or some goals that you might have are things like, I might want to buy a Corvette or a plane, or these goals are things that you can set yourself, and these goals I'm not going to set forth to you, but some of these are some common goals that people will have when they're thinking about what to do with their money. And if you don't really set your goals, you might wake up one day, how many days in the future, just thinking, how did I get to this point, and why am I not like I thought I would be somewhere else at this point in time? So I'm going to take a look at the comments again. It looks like I think this is pretty straightforward. Any specific questions that you might have right now, I take them. Otherwise, let's go on to the next segment, which is what to do when you're earning your first paycheck. Now, when you start earning money, besides seeing your bank account go up and the number in your bank account go up, there are three things that in general that you might want to consider doing. The first thing is setting up an emergency fund, and this is something that's not as useful for high school students, but I'm going to give the general concept of what an emergency fund is, and we can apply it to like how we might think of it in a high school context. So usually an emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of your expenses. So let's say if you look at how you've been spending money in the past, and you spend on average $2,000 a month. You might say, well, I want to build up an emergency fund then of $12,000. That means, let's say if I get hurt, or if I lose my job, or something happens, or I need to take time off from work because to visit family overseas, or something like that. You have 6 months of flexibility, right? Because if you're spending $2,000 a month every month, $12,000 will allow you to survive and not have to worry about how am I going to pay for this or that for that amount of time. So it gives you time. This goes into that equation of time being money. It may also make sure that you have flexibility. As a HS hacker, it's not as big of a deal for most of you to have an emergency fund in terms of buying this time and flexibility. But it is always good to have a pool of money which you can be flexible with. That, let's say if you want to buy a new computer and the new MacBook that's $1,500 or something. If you have only $300 in your bank account, that's really hard to do. But if you have saved up a few $1,000s, you're going to be a lot more flexible with what you can do. And if that's something that you need, you can get it. So number one, when you start earning money, make sure that you still start building up a bit of an emergency fund. And that's something for you to define really, like how much that is or how long you want it to be. Some people are more comfortable with their emergency fund being 3 months. Some people are more comfortable with 6 or 12 months. Some people are living paycheck to paycheck, which that means they have pretty much no emergency fund. And if something bad happens, let's say you you need car repairs and that costs $600 and you might not have that in your bank account, that's really, really bad. And it's going to make it so you have to scramble and figure out what to do. Or let's say if you accidentally drop your phone and you need to spend another few $100s on a new phone. Again, that's something very, very hard to do. Let's see, let's take a look at, so Rolando had a question saying, how do you make money by coding as a teenager? So this is really actually not something that I'm going to cover in this class. I think, or in this workshop or whatever we're calling this. This is out of the scope. This is, the purpose of this is saying, no, I'm starting to make money. What do I do with the money that I'm making? Not exactly how do I make money in the first place. But that could be something that we do a workshop on in the future, if that's something of interest to many of you. Let's see, so, oh, and Shores did answer that question. Okay, cool. So earning your paycheck, first emergency fund. Again, if you're a high school student, that might not be like thinking of how many months of emergency expenses, but that might be thinking about like what might I need to spend money on in the next 6 to 12 months, and what I could do with it. The second thing is save for goals. Yes, so save for goals. So if you have any goals like making sure that you can pay for college, or making sure that you can go on a trip to overseas. Those are goals that you could save for. And number 3 is save for retirement. So I think all these 3 things are, after saying your monthly expenses of I'm going to be spending money on food, and I'm going to be spending money on shelter, and so on and so forth. But this is slightly reversed from what most things will say. Most guides will say number 1, emergency fund, number 2, retirement, and number 3, goals. Because you're in high school, I would say you can reverse it. You could go the other way and save for goals before you save for retirement. And I think partially because, especially when you're younger, it's good to invest in yourself and make sure that you have, and we'll talk about that a bit later in the talk. Okay, let's see. So Tyler's messaging, there is a question. Leo again says, how much money would you recommend setting aside? Like, is there a certain percentage, or should you stick to the same amount every month, put more or less? So the thing with the emergency fund, and yes, Tyler said emergency fund also helps with non-emergencies. I think with the emergency fund, if you don't have it, it's kind of an emergency. It's like, if you don't have a fire department in a city, you might want to, the city government might want to consider doing that before they do anything else. So I wouldn't say putting money into emergency fund is really a percentage-based thing. It's like, do this, as soon as you reasonably can. Before that, if this is more advice for adults, pay off debts. I don't think you will have like credit card debt or car debt or whatnot as a high school student. But usually you should be doing this before anything else, so that whenever you're spending money, you're not thinking about like, oh, I'm getting a check in next Monday for $500, and then I can buy this thing that I need to buy. You're thinking about, okay, I can buy this today because I need to buy it, because I have a comfortable pool, and I can wait until Monday for that check to come in. Okay, we'll talk about investing later in this workshop as well. Right now, it's really just to get to part of right now we're earning money. What exactly do we do with that money that we're earning? Okay, so I think with that, some people were asking about taxes in the Facebook group. Is that something that you'd like to cover? That was next that I had on the agenda. But if you don't want to really talk about taxes and you want to talk more about investing, I can skip this and go on. If not, I can talk about taxes. This should take like 5 to 10 minutes at most, and then we can talk about investing, which I think a lot of people think is the fun part. So we'll definitely get to that in a bit. Okay. So Andrew Craswell did ask, say I have $9,000 in emergency fund, how would you save that money? Should it be invested, savings account, or bonds? For the most part, you should definitely keep it as cash in a savings account. There are slightly more advanced strategies for things to do. But the point of the emergency fund is that it's always there if you need it. So if you're investing, some days, the investments can go up, some days investments can go down, and you don't want it to be a point where, let's say the economy tanks and then all of your investments are down and you have to sell them to unlock your emergency fund. That's not a good place to be in. There are some bank accounts that give actually a decent portion of interest. There's one called Ally Bank that gives you, I think, 0.9 or 0.99% interest. There are a few others out there, so if you'd like to search online, do some research, search for high yield savings accounts, and you'll find some online savings accounts that are pretty, that are pretty reputable, that pay a decent portion of interest. The other thing that are nice about online bank accounts, I personally have an online bank account as well as an offline bank account, is that with online bank accounts, typically they reimburse all of your ATM fees. So if you want to go to ATM and it costs like $10 because you're at Disneyland and ATMs over there cost a lot for some reason, you can comfortably use your online bank's ATM card, and they'll refund you the ATM fee. That's kind of their price for paying for not actually having physical buildings. So. Okay, so let's go on about taxes, and then we'll get into investing. So most of you here, if you're working as a summer internship or so on and so forth, you're going to be working as an employee, and so your taxes will be taken out of your paycheck. So how taxes work is that you have about 7.5%, which is a flat rate tax, which gets applied to your income, called FICA tax. What that covers is Social Security and Medicare. That's something that's non-negotiable. The other thing that you have is just straight income tax, and America has what's called it's an income tax that scales as you earn more money. So that means on your first about $9,000 of income, you're getting taxed 10%. On your next from about $9,000 to $36,000, you're getting taxed 15%. From there on to about $87,000, you get taxed 25%. So basically, the concept is called the marginal tax rate, and that means the more you earn, the more you get taxed. But it's only on that additional portion that you earn. So sometimes you might hear people complaining about, oh, I'm going to make more money, but I'm actually going to lose more in taxes. That's for the most part always incorrect. Your first bit of money that you earn, your first $9,000, it's not exactly $9,000, but approximately $9,000 is always taxed at 10%. Then it's always taxed, the next however many thousand is taxed at 15%, and so on and so forth. So the thing is, when you get to tax season, so the lovely April 15th that just passed this month, you will get to file a tax return. And your tax return basically is where you tell the IRS everything that you made, and you don't have to tell them about what you spent money on, but anything relevant to the tax process, where you actually calculate, this is how much that I owe in tax this year for 2014. And this is how much I paid in, right? Because your paycheck, your company would be getting taxed and take that out of your paycheck every year. So for the most part, especially if you're not making too much money, most of you will be getting a tax refund, which is great, because that means that you get some, you made money, you paid it into the tax system, and you found out that you actually accidentally paid too much to Uncle Sam. And so Uncle Sam will give you a check back for however much. And the reason why this is because there's this thing called the standard deduction. And for most people, I mean, you'll hear about things like, you can donate money to charity and you'll save in taxes. For most people, you'll actually be taking what's called the standard deduction, which is where you say, where basically you've made this much money, and you're going to owe this much money in taxes to the government. But the IRS actually allows you to say, okay, for this portion of money, I'm not going to pay taxes on because of this tax benefit that's allowed. So the standard deduction basically says subtract $6,300 from however much you made, and that is actually how much you would calculate tax on. The other way to do it is what's called an itemized deduction, which is where you say, okay, I donated $1,000, I paid $3,000 in mortgage interest, I did this, I get this tax credit, and now I'm going to deduct $8,000 of income from my taxes. And what that basically means is, let's say if I made $50,000 last year, if I took the standard deduction, I would take subtract 6,300 from that, which becomes $43,700, and I pay taxes on that amount of money. Or I can take the itemized deduction, which again is where you just add up every single sort of tax deductible activity you might have done, and subtract that from your total taxable income. So because most people in here are high school hackers, and most of them, I have seen some older people in this chat. Most of you will be earning in a small enough and be doing tax deductible activities small enough that you'll be taking the standard deduction. So if you're a high school student and you make $5,000, for instance, actually all of that is covered under the standard deduction. So even though your employer would have been taking out money from for taxes in every paycheck, you would get all of that back because all of that $5,000 would not be taxable because it's lower than the $6,300 of the standard deduction. Let me take a look at the chat really quickly, see if there are any questions that I can answer, and then I'll go into contractor taxes really quickly as well. So, wow, there are a lot of comments here, so let me read that. So, Therese is asking, how does an online bank account with interest work? It's Ryan answers, same with the normal bank account. Basically, they just don't have physical branches. So the harder thing is that if you need to give them cash, some of them will allow you to mail them cash and they'll deposit for you. Some of them won't. But the basic thing is, if you can do online banking and so on and so forth, and get money from ATMs, there's not as much of a reason to have physical bank. Shreyas asks, do they profit from you screwing up and paying more in fees? No. It depends on the bank. For the most part, online banks will actually have less fees, and the reason is because they don't have to buy large buildings or hire people and so on and so forth. Let's see. Okay, cool. Okay, looks like Tyler just told me that there's a great discussion of how they make money. All right, cool. So next thing that I wanted to talk about is also contractor taxes. So some of you may have been. So first, if you're an employee, at the end of every year, you should get a form. I believe you should get it by mid-February of each new year. You should get a form called a W-2. Which shows all of your taxable information and so on and so forth. If you haven't, talk to your employer. If you still haven't, or if they're bankrupt, or if you cannot get it for some reason, you can tell the IRS, and they'll usually help you figure this stuff out because they don't take kindly to people who don't pay taxes. So, all right, great. So, let's see, contractor taxes. So if you're independent contractor, and some of you might be, working as classified as independent contractors, your taxes are actually not taken out of your paycheck. So if you get a $5,000 check from a company and you're an independent contractor, they're not taken out of your paycheck. So you do have to budget for this. Otherwise, you're going to be in for a nasty surprise at tax time. So another thing, though, is if you are and let me define how a contractor works. Actually, IRS has a few specific guidelines for if you're a contractor versus an employee. The biggest thing is a contractor is someone who decides their own schedule and brings in their own equipment, uses their own stuff, and is really only given guidance, hey, this is what you need to do, not this is how you do it. So for instance, if I hire someone and I say, hey, can you help me put a wall in this room? I'm saying, hey, this is what you need to do. So they are a contractor. Versus if I say, hey, I'm going to be your boss. I'm going to say you have to come to work between 9 to 5 every day. And today you're going to go to this place. I'm going to give you a hammer and some drywall, and you're going to put in this wall. That is an employee. So they're treated differently by the IRS. If you're actually incorrectly categorized as a contractor, which some people are, you can tell the IRS, and the IRS will actually make your employer pay the taxes. But yes, so if you're a contractor, your taxes are not taken out of your paycheck. But what you can do, you have an additional thing that you can do, is you can subtract the expenses. So you can say, well, because I was hired to put in this wall and I needed to buy a truck just to get to this work site, then I actually didn't make as much money because that was part of my expenses. So for HS Hackers, some of that might be I needed to buy an Android phone just to build the Android app because I usually use an iPhone. And so now you can say, well, even though I made $5,000 from this company, I can subtract $500 for the Android phone. So I actually only made $4,500. So you can report that to the IRS, and you'll say, okay, I made $5,000, but I earned $5,000 in payments. I spent $500, and so I actually only made $4,500. And after that, the $4,500 pretty much gets taxed regularly, just like we were talking earlier. The only difference is if you're an employee, you pay 7.5% in FICA tax, so the Social Security and the Medicare. As a contractor, you pay 15%. And the reason is actually when you're an employee, your employer pays the other 7.5%. So those are some hidden benefits of, of being an employee that you might not frequently know about. So those are the two specific things about taxes. Okay. Looks like there's some side questions, but the commenters have really good answers, so that's good. So next thing I'd like to talk about is investing. Let's see. Actually, I actually didn't put in my notes to talk about credit cards, and I did notice that some people were asking about credit cards. So let me really quickly mention credit cards and why credit cards are typically a good thing. This might be new to some of you. If you have heard, some people think credit cards are evil and should be avoided. Some people think credit cards are a good thing. For the most part, I think generally accepted advice is that credit cards are mostly positive. And here's the reason. And typically how a debit card works is if I buy something, let's say I go to Safeway and I buy $5 of food, I put it on the debit card, it's going to get taken out of my bank account pretty much immediately, that $5. So if I have $1,000 in my bank account, now I have $995. Now, if I were to use a credit card for that payment, it would actually go onto, I charge the $5. It would go out of what's called my credit limit. That's how much the credit card company is willing to loan to you. And then at the end of the month, the credit card company is going to say, hey, you charged $5 to your credit card. How would you like to pay? You can pay $1, but that means you'll have to pay a little more in interest next month. So your minimum payment is $1. Or you can pay it in full, which is $5. We are not going to charge any interest on those $5 because this is the first time we're telling you you owe us this $5 for charging it on your credit card. And so that means, and they'll say, pay this bill in the next 25 days. And so this is actually really good. That means that, just like earlier we were talking about emergency funds, you have a little more flexibility. Here you have a little more flexibility. And the other thing is now, let's say if I bought this $5, food from Safeway on January 1st, I pretty much have until February 25th to pay for it without paying any extra money. So why is that good? Well, one, I have that extra $5 in my bank account to generate interest. Right now, interest payments are not that much. But if you, sorry, I just brushed my phone off the table. But if you think that's hundreds or thousands of dollars that you might spend on a credit card in a month and multiply that by that 55 days, that's actually a pretty good amount of money that you might make in interest over time. The second thing is it's more flexible. Let's say if you make $1,000 a month and you spend $1,000 a month with just using a debit card, your average balance might be $5,000 in your bank account. If you're using a credit card, because you pay it on average, 45 days afterwards, you actually have an average of six to 7,000 in your bank account, because you have that extra month's worth of money that you haven't had yet to pay for. The third reason why people use credit cards is that you actually get cash back. Most credit cards will either give you airline miles or cash back or so on and so forth, that allow you to earn money on the money you're spending. So let's say if you spend $1,000 on a credit card in a month, there's a card called Citi Double Cash that actually gives you 2% cash back. That means I just made another $20 for no reason just using this credit card. The last thing is that if someone steals your debit card and let's say charges $1,000 on it, now you're out $1,000 in your bank account. You'll call your bank and they'll freeze it and they'll try to investigate. But sometimes they might not be the quickest at figuring that out for you, and it takes more time to figure things out. With a credit card, they'll freeze it. I mean, it's their money that they've lost. They know they have a higher risk of you not paying it when push comes to shove. So they'll actually come more to bat for you in the case of fraud. There's slightly more fraud protections. Some credit cards will even have things where they extend your warranty for up to a year for free. So if you might buy like a laptop with a 2-year warranty, you'll actually get a 3rd year of warranty for free. They might even have things like 90-day theft protection if they get stolen. You can. And those all depend on the credit card. These are very common though on mainstream credit cards, and a very good feature to have. And those are mostly things that debit cards do not have. Or on the most part, debit cards will have worse consumer protection and insurance and things like that. So that's pretty much all I wanted to. The one thing though is that credit cards do have very high interest rates. So do not carry over a balance. You don't want to be carrying over a balance, which is where, let's say if you charge $1,000 to the credit card, your credit card company will say your minimum payment is $30, but we'll add in 20% interest. That means that the $970 that you didn't pay, they'll charge interest on that, and in that you'll have to pay even more over time for your money. So don't do that. That's bad. But because we're talking about emergency funds and making sure that you do have a comfortable buffer, you shouldn't ever be in that situation. And sometimes if you are in that situation, it might be the better choice than not having that even at all. So those are things to keep in mind for a credit card. So let me take a look. Troy says, can you store funds in a credit card account? Yes, but really there's not much of a reason to be doing so. They won't pay you interest on the funds that you store on a credit card account. But yeah, let's see. Okay. Leroy Games says, are there any hidden fees, taxes, etc. that we should know about? I mean, again, those are dependent on the product. So make sure just to look through the fine print, or just research what other people have said about things that you might be signing for about those things. Tyler's asking me to talk about credit ratings. That's actually a very good point. Later in life, if you want to take a loan for a car or take a loan for a house, also when you're applying for a credit card, they're going to pull what's called your credit report. And your credit report is basically where all of the financial banks and agencies and so on and so forth, they get together, they put together a database of how good is Edward at paying off his debts. So if he's, if I want to go and borrow $20,000 to buy a new car, and they see that I've been borrowing $1,000 from the credit card company and paying it back promptly every month on time, they're like, good, Ed's a star citizen, and he's going to, so that gives me a high credit score, and that means that banks are going to be willing to loan me money for less interest rate, meaning I don't have to pay as much over time because they know that I'm less risk. If though, let's say with a credit card payment, I forget about it and I pay late or constantly, they know that I'm a higher risk. Or let's say if I've been bankrupt in the past. That's not something that's common for you HS hackers to be bankrupt in the past. But anyways, your credit history is very important. And having a credit card and establishing that history of repeat payments over time is very good. Some people may say that you need to carry a balance. Again, take a loan for longer than that free period on a credit card to get a credit history. If they say so, that's incorrect. That's what you have to do, though. Some people, Shreyas is asking, can you prepay a credit card? Again, yes, you can. But if you do that, then you're not, when the credit card sends you the bill, they're going to say, hey, you don't owe us any money. You don't need to send us a check this month. And if that's the case, then they report along those bills that they send you every month to the credit bureaus. And again, they're going to say, well, Ed owed $0, Ed paid $0. So I don't know. He could be good, he could be bad, whatever. Okay, great. Tyler also mentioned, yes, even some jobs will do credit card checks. And it really depends on the job. I mean, people can do whatever they want whatever they want without the discriminatory things of age, race, gender, and so on and so forth. But yes, some companies will be like, I need to trust this person, right? I'm going to have them run a cash register, and I want to make sure that I can trust that they're not going to. And sometimes credit checks are, credit worthiness sort of rating signal that they'll use. All right, so let's talk about investments. So I think a lot of times people will talk about investing. There's a lot of misinformation out there about investing, and let's talk about it in an earnest way so that we can get rid of some of this misinformation, and also so that a good place to start when you're looking into how can I invest my money in the future. So first thing to know is there's this term called asset. It's something that you're going to encounter quite frequently when you are when you're looking and doing research on what to invest in, or so on and so forth. And what an asset is, it just basically means a thing that's worth money. So what are examples of assets? Well, an example of an asset is, let's say, gold. Gold sits there and is worth money. Another example is a house. A house sits there and is worth money, but actually a house, you can spend money to improve it, and then you can rent it out. A company, if you own a portion of a company, it's also an asset. A company will spend money, but for the most part, they'll try to make more money than they spend. A person is an asset. I mean, you can, sometimes you'll hear people are our greatest asset. You have arms, they can lift things, and they can do things. It's something that's that has value. Or another thing is an IOU, so like a loan. If you if you have a piece of paper written by someone saying, hey, I owe you $1,000, this piece of paper that you have is an asset. It's worth money. So most of us are in here are programmers, and we'll have, we want to abstract things away. So the way that I really like to think about assets is they are boxes. They're boxes, and not just boxes, but they're money printing boxes. So I'm gonna drink some more water really quickly. It's pretty hot over here in the Bay Area today. Okay, so in money printing boxes. So what I mean by that is not like literally like a counterfeiting machine, but in the form of, I mean, you can think of the story of the golden goose, right? A golden goose eats stuff and lays eggs, golden eggs, hopefully. And the reason why I really like this is because you can think of it as an asset of something that has inputs, outputs, and is worth something in and of itself. If we look at it from the perspective of a house, right, we can spend money. The money either is like, yes, we can spend money to improve it. Now the box is worth more because there's more stuff inside it. And then we rent it out, and it will print out money. a company, again, it spends money to make money. It's a money printing box. A person, I can choose to use my arms and lift heavy stuff every day, and I can probably make, probably closer to minimum wage, and that's a money printing box. Me using my arms to lift stuff, prints me money in one sense or other. My brain, also a money printing box, right? It can create value. I can think of ideas. I can think of code. I can do things that will earn me money. An IOU, again, you spend money at the start, and then it makes you money back. So the reason why, and the other asset that we talked about earlier is gold. Gold is not quite a money printing box. It doesn't really take in money. It doesn't really, but it does have, the box itself has some value. So I'm thinking about what gives these money printing boxes value. Well, the first thing is these have value because they generate money, right? If I were to say, hey, if someone were to tell me, hey, Edward, I have a money printing box, you literally like buy it and it will print you $1 a year, I'm going to say, wow, that sounds awesome. How much are you selling it for? Because it prints me money. Now, what it's worth is dependent on different things. But let's say if I was willing to pay $10 for it, if I spend $10 on a money printing box and it prints me $1 a year, that's equivalent to me putting $10 in a savings account and making a 10% interest rate, which is actually, that is pretty good, right? Because, in 10 years, I might decide, I actually, need more money. I'm going to sell this money printing box. It's still printing money just as well as day one. And I'm going to sell it to someone else for $10. And so that's kind of, if you think about when you hear about, people buying or selling stocks, or people buying and selling bonds, or people buying and selling houses, that's pretty much what they're thinking about here. They're saying, I'm going to buy a house. It's going to, earn money. And the two reasons why this is worth money, one is because I can rent it out. And the second thing is because I think it might be worth more in the future. These are two different things that you have to balance in terms of what gives these value. But the reason why someone might think it will be worth more in the future is, one, because it generates money. That it's, so in all aspects, the reasons why assets have value is because they generate money. A secondary reason why, someone might want to buy it is because they think it could be generating more money in the future. So with the example of houses, companies, and so on and so forth, I think it makes sense. Within the example of gold, the reason why people might think it might be worth money in the future is because it can be used to maybe make jewelry. It's used in manufacturing semiconductors and other things, and it's relatively scarce. So those are reasons why it would have value. So the goal of investing is really to acquire more of these money printing boxes and use these money printing boxes to print you more money to invest, to buy more money printing boxes. And why is that? That's because of the thing called compound interest. If you've studied math and heard of the term exponential growth, if something is generating you more of something, that's really good. So to use the example of the money printing boxes, say if I have 10 of these money printing boxes that make me $1 a year, that means next year I can buy another one of these money printing boxes and make $11 a year. And the year after, I can buy even more and make $12 a year. And the year after, I can make 13, 14, so on and so forth. It's going to increase at an exponential rate. So I'm going to show you an Excel chart of what happens with these money printing boxes. So let me see. Okay, so or just investing in general. So let me open this up and then screen share it with you really quickly. Screen share Excel book 1. All right, cool. So I have a tiny Excel sheet right here. I'm going to look at here. I'm going to you can't see the formula box over here because I'm, well, whatever. I'll just keep it small. But anyways, so here we have the Excel sheet, and what we're going to use is we're going to assume an interest rate of 7% a year, and 7% a year is usually what you would expect to make in the stock market over the long run. You know, some days someone might be, you know, the value of a money printing box is really what people are willing to pay for it. So some days someone might be willing to buy it for $5. Some days someone might be willing to buy it for like $15. And that's kind of the whim of the market, right? But they have value in of itself, no matter what people want to pay for it. But anyways, so we're going to assume a 7% interest rate a year. And you know, you start out at $0 in year one. You add $5,500, or over here actually. So this is $80,000 compounding at 7% a year. So that means after 1 year, $81,000 becomes $87,000. After 2 years, 87 becomes 93, then 99, then 106, then 114, then 122, then 130. And in about 10 years, it becomes 149,000, which is slightly more than double of the 75,000 in year 31. And here's year 41. 41 to 51. Now this is $294,000, which is about double again. And you go from year 51 to 61, and it's $578,000. So you can see how this increases really quickly over time, and this is why people won't want to invest in there. I just realized that okay, the screen share is going live. Okay, cool. So I'm going to stop screen sharing right now. Okay, great. So, however, we've been talking about, you know, houses, companies to invest in, people to. I think number one, especially as a you know, as a HS hacker, number one is you should actually invest in yourself. First thing you should be doing with your money. You shouldn't really think about, you know, if I buy stocks, they'll increase at 7% a year. Because let's say if I buy some better education for myself, right? Like my brain is going to become more powerful in one way or another. And if that gives me more, you know, more knowledge that I can either generate personal satisfaction with, that might be just a goal of how to use my money, at our career rewards, that would be a good thing to do. So let's say if, you know, between the choice of, let's say, buying, I don't even know, buying a $350 Apple Watch because you want to learn how to develop apps for it, or $350 in, you know, a savings account or a stock market, I would say go for the Apple Watch. Don't get it because you want to be cool or whatever, right? But if you're getting it because you you know, are developing an app and need to know, learn how to do that, that's a great investment, because maybe, you know, you'll probably get more than $350 back some way or other in your career because you know how to develop for an Apple Watch, given that you're, you know, a developer. You know, another thing is, you know, paying for a textbook, right? Like if you need a textbook to learn something, like that's a great way. Or, you know, a class or university education. Those are great ways to invest in yourself. And I think number one, those are going to give you the highest return on your investment. Other things that are good, it's health. You know, if you're sick all the time, you're not going to be as effective at doing whatever you want to be doing. So health is also a really good way of investing in yourself. Experiences, life experiences are also great ways. The second thing, of course, is to invest in other assets. So especially for you know, you guys as and girls as high school hackers, I'd say the number one thing, and the thing that you probably mostly only have the budget for, is to invest in what's called a Roth IRA. Now, Roth IRA is a you know, Uncle Sam's you know, the U.S. government's way of rewarding people to invest for retirement and other things that they might need. So a Roth IRA is a special type of account that you can open with banks or investment companies or so on and so forth, that you can only put in $5,500 per year. And this is after after tax. There's some investment accounts and whatnot that you can put in money before you pay payroll tax on it. This is after tax money. So the reason why I say this is because you can only put in $5,500 after tax per year, but you can take out money, that $5,500 you put in at any time. So let's say over the course of 10 years, I put in $55,000. I can take out that $55,000 actually at any time. The gains, however, the money that you gain from it, you cannot take out at any time. But the reason why you would want to put money in this account is that money you gain from it, when you reach 59 and a half years old, the US government is going to allow you to take that money out of the account tax-free. You don't have to pay any tax on the gain, while usually you would actually have to pay tax. There are also some other special circumstances that you can take out money from those gains. For instance, you can take out the first $10,000 of gains that you had for paying for a house. You can take out some for qualified education and medical expenses. Those are things that you'll have to do more research into. But because of that, because you can only put in that much money every year, it has to be money that you've earned. So if you made $0 this year, you can't have your parents give you $5,500 and put it into your Roth IRA. It has to be money that you earn, that you reported to the IRS as you earning. You should almost absolutely do that. And so I will tell you why. Remember that Excel sheet that I had open earlier? I'm going to screen share that again, and I'm going to show you the example of what happens when you do things well. So here's this Excel sheet again. So these rows over here I actually use to represent your age. So let's say if you have two people, you have one which is a good college student who is taking this advice seriously, and number two is you have Mr. Ketchup, who hasn't really thought about investments until in their 30s. So a good college student, after they graduate out of college, they're 22 years old, and column B is how much money they contribute every year. So a good college student puts in $5,500 into their Roth IRA, and at the end of the year they have $5,500 in their Roth IRA. You can see my equation right now is B22 equals B22, which is this money, plus C21, which is the previous year's money, times absolute value B2, which is the interest rate that we have right here, which is 7% a year. So the good college student puts in money for the first 10 years of his career, or her career. I'm just going to use his because that's easier right now. And then ends up with $75,000 at the end of the first 10 years. And after that, let's say starts a family, has a bunch of expenses, and stops contributing to retirement entirely. When he reaches 65, he's going to end up with $758,000 in his retirement account, which is a lot of money. Now you have Mr. Ketchup, who at 31 realizes, shit, I'm not investing my money. I need to save for my retirement. I'm going to do this, right? Every year, I'm going to put in $5,500 every single year. And guess what? That person ends up with $705,000 in their bank account. While the good college student who only invested for 10 years ended up with $758,000. Remember, the good college student invested from the years 22, between the age of 22 to 31, and made more money, or has more money for retirement than the person who invested between the years of 32 to 65. That's literally 32 years of putting in $5,500 versus just 10 years of putting in $5,500. Look at what that time actually allows you to do. Now, I'm going to scroll over to the right side because I'm going to scroll over to here you are as an HS hacker. Here's the opportunity here. As an HS hacker, let's say you get an internship when you're 16, or your summer job, and you put in the full $5,500. And maybe you're getting summer internships when you're college and putting in $5,500 for these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of high school and college. So junior, senior year of high school, and all 4 years of college. We are going to scroll down, and you're going to end up with more money than so $772,000. You're going to end up with more money than this good college student that contributed for 10 years, or this, Mr. Ketchup who's contributing for 32 years. You're going to earn more money than them combined, only putting in money for these 6 years. That's the power of compound interest, and that's the reason why I think after investing in yourself, making sure that you have an emergency fund, you as a high school hacker need to put money in your Roth IRA. So that ends my presentation on what I wish I knew about money when I was a HS hacker. Now I'm going to open it up for questions and general discussion. Some people in the chat are also suggesting mint.com for tracking your spending and so on and so forth. It is a very useful site that you can definitely check out. The other thing is in your Roth IRA, what you most likely will want to invest money in is into low-cost target retirement fund. So if you search for target retirement fund, there are funds from Vanguard or Schwab that are very low cost. That means they charge very little in fees to invest for you, and automatically adjust their riskiness so that they'll take the most risk in terms for most reward early on, and then less risk over time. So Sharice is asking, what 7% as an interest rate? Is that common or average or something? That's very that's kind of the average return that you can expect from the stock market over a long period of time. In the short periods of time, it can go wildly. Like in the last few years, it's been like 30 or 40% a year. And some years it will be negative 30 or 40% a year. But in the long run, it's going to that's a historical rate. And the reason why is because you own companies. And let's say if you own a share in Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola is usually going to sell more Coca-Cola next year than last year because there are going to be more people on the planet and so on and so forth. So those are things to keep in mind. The Oro Games was asking about how much he wants to spend, how much to spend on wants each month. That is not something that I can really say. These are things that you should decide for yourself, because this is you looking at, what are your goals, right? And that is the purpose of you budgeting, where you're thinking about like, what are my goals? How do I want to be spending my money on a monthly basis, right? Do I want to be spending more money on housing? Do I want to be spending for a nice house or less nice house? Do I want to be spending more or less money on the car? Or do I care about cars? Do I want to just take a train or a bike? Or do I want to be spending more money on video games, on the latest Xbox? Do I want to be spending money on vacations? Those are all sorts of things that you should be deciding for yourself. But at the minimum, if you're building an emergency fund, the emergency fund for the most part is static. So it's not a constant monthly expense. Monthly expenses will be things like food, shelter, transportation, and entertainment, and so on and so forth. But if you think about a Roth IRA, if you're only able to contribute $5,500 a year by law, that's about like $500 a month of savings. And if you're doing just that, you can see that's a pretty good position to be in, especially for a high school student. Typically, from what I've heard, you don't want to spend more than 1/3 of your income on rent, but it really depends on the city you're in. Because like if you're in New York or the Bay Area, you might spend more. In other areas, you might spend less. And transportation, I think the rule of thumb I've heard, it really varies. People go anywhere from like, so I mean, it's really something for you to decide. Okay. Let's see. Sharice is asking, is there anything I should know before creating a Mint account? The one thing is Mint is going to try to sell you a bunch of stuff. How they, they're free, but how they make money is by saying, hey, you should do this with your money. You should do that. sometimes their recommendations are wrong. So make sure to research the recommendations that it makes before acting on them. Because do realize that if they say you should sign up for an account here, they are going to probably make a few $100s off of you signing up for that account or credit card. Let's see. Besides that, are there any other questions? So if you're not on YouTube comments, just post it on the Facebook page and I will see it. Let me see here. Alvin Lynn says, thank you very much. Great workshop. The Aurora Games says, how should we go about developing a good credit rating as a high school hacker and a young college student? Yeah, opening up a credit card would definitely help. Sometimes it's very hard to open up if you're under 18. Something that you could do if you have supportive parents is they could add you as an authorized user to their cards, and that gives you a little bit of a rub-off effect. Basically, they add you to their account and give you a credit card under their account. If they have bad credit, that's going to be detrimental, but if they have pretty good credit, it kind of rubs off because it says, hey, this person is willing to let the other person borrow money in their name, and it's probably a good sign on how responsible they are. Even if they don't give you that credit card physically and they just lock it up in a closet, that gives you some of a positive benefit. It's not like as good as you having a credit card yourself, of course. Let's see. Michael Rosenberger asks, hey, did your Roth spreadsheet account for inflation? No, it did not. There are several things that I didn't account for. One thing is that the IRS is probably going to increase the limit for like how much you can contribute to your Roth IRA on a yearly basis. But at the same time, do remember that the end number is still going to be the same. Those end numbers are not different. And yes, maybe $5,500 this year is going to be worth more than $5,500 30 years in the future that you're contributing. But again, IRS will probably increase the limit, and that's not something I can promise or whatnot, but probably increase the limit to something like $6,000 or $6,500. And I do believe there's an exception that like if you're older, 55 years old, then you can contribute slightly extra to your IRA account. Joseph's asking advice on personal investment. Invest in yourself besides education. Just making sure that in general education is good, safety is good. So if you're in a really sketchy area and you're worried about getting murdered every day, like that's not a good place to live, especially in college. That's going to help a bit. Investing in sometimes conveniences are worth it as well. So like if you're always if your bike is like always falling apart, and you might want to buy a new bike so you can get around easier and you can get around more reliably. So and yes, Therese, that is, you have to be an authorized user to a credit card account. So. All right, it looks like that's pretty much all of the questions that we have here. So thank you so much for joining us on this workshop. If you have any additional questions, post them in the event and I'll try to help out or point you to good resources. Otherwise, hope this helped out. Let me know, give me more feedback. If this is good, then we'll try to do more stuff in this along these lines in the future. Thanks so much for joining us here today. Edward out.